Well, we start first with politics, which dominated events this past week from a variety of different perspectives. First and foremost, a big development in the race for U.S. Senate as former Arkansas Farm Bureau President Stanley Reed jumped in the already crowded GOP field, bringing the number of announced Republican candidates to 8. Joining me to talk politics is Republican blogger Jason Tolbert. He maintains the Republican Insider website, the Tolbert Report. Jason, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me, Roby.
Stanley Reed's entry into the already crowded GOP field adds another dimension to the mix. I know some Republicans are saying that 8 is enough. What do you think are Reed's strengths? What do you think are his liabilities?
Well, his strengths are certainly that he has a multitude of connections throughout the state. He was previous president of Arkansas Farm Bureau, previous president of the Arkansas Board of Trustees, member of a multitude of organizations that's going to allow him to tap into some fundraising and to fundraise very quickly. And that fundraising is going to allow him to run a very professional campaign, put together a good staff, and get his message out. Now, his weaknesses, and I think some Republican opponents are already hitting me on this, is his lack of Republican credentials. He's given money to Democrat candidates. He's also given money to Republican candidates, but he's given money to Blanche Lincoln as recently as this spring. Now, his other big weakness is just a geographic weakness. He's from the east part of the state. Traditionally, they vote in a Democrat primary, so he's got to run in a part of the state that he's not from. He's got to run in central and in northwest Arkansas, or he's got to convince the people from East Arkansas to vote in a Republican primary, perhaps for the first time in their life.
Well, Jason, let me ask you, does Reed take away votes from any particular announced GOP candidate, or do you think he brings new voters to the mix?
Well, that's really the million-dollar question. He's certainly going to bring some new voters, but that's the challenge for him, is can he bring those voters in the Republican primary? He's from East Arkansas, Lee County, his home county. 99% of the voters there and traditionally have voted in the Democratic primary during the primary season. That's where most of the local races are decided. So he has to convince his base to now vote in a Republican primary and then campaign in parts of the state, the central part of the state and the northwest part of the state, where he's not really from.
Does his entry in the race change the strategy for any of the candidates who are already out there, namely perceived frontrunner Gilbert Baker?
Well, it's certainly changed Gilbert Baker's strategy more than it has anyone else. Gilbert Baker, he's been running as the front runner, and basically the other 6 candidates have really been running against Baker. Baker has been touting his ability to raise a lot of money. He's raised around $700,000 so far. And so with Reed coming in, he now has to compete against another well-funded campaign. So he has to run differently than he's been running in the past.
And what about the Jim Holt factor? He's a former elected official from up in northwest Arkansas where a strong number of votes are going to come from. He's got a pretty decent following. He's sitting on the sidelines, but he's sending some overtures that he will run. First of all, do you think that he gets in? And if he does, how do you think that changes the equation?
Well, I think Jim Holt right now certainly feels compelled to get in. I would be surprised if he doesn't. I think we'll be hearing from him before the end of the year whether he will or not. And it would definitely change the equation. I think we'd be looking at a 3-way race between Jim Holt, Stanley Reed, and Gilbert Baker if that happens.
Jason, let me ask you, is there concern among Republicans that a bruising primary battle will harm the party's chances of defeating Blanche Lincoln in the general election in 2010?
Well, I think that's certainly a concern of some Republicans. Obviously, a primary can be healthy if it's focused on the issues, if it's focused on nominating the best candidate to win in November. But with this many candidates in the race, it's not going to be a surprise if it does get ugly before it's all over.
All right, blogger Jason Tolbert with the TolbertReport.com. He is up on all things political, particularly Republican Party politics. Jason, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Roby.